Greetings people, welcome to iDrum, and I'm delighted to say that today we're in the middle of the country. In fact, we're in Leicester, but even better than that, I'm joined by the one and only Mr. Clem Burke. Clem,
hello, Ian.
Thank you very much for
mate?
your time. Very, very well, thank you. Thank you so much for giving us some time today to be here with us. I know you're deeply in the tour with Blondie.
Right.
And here we are 40 years later, and the band is still going from strength to strength almost, it would seem.
Yeah, it gets easier as we get older, I think. You know, I mean, that's one of the great things about being a musician. I think you're always learning, and as long as you apply yourself, it gets easier. You know, I mean, it is 40 years in, hard to believe. It's like some weird B movie.
Right.
But of course, it's always great to be over here in the UK.
Well, we're always pleased to see you too, Clem, I have to say. I mean, obviously we've seen you with Blondie, we've seen you here with the Eurythmics, and you're back again now with Blondie. I mean, when, in 1975, did you really think that it would have this kind of longevity?
Well, my plan was to be retired by 30. Now it's 30 years from 30, so no, I don't think anyone really expects to have that kind of longevity, but I think, you know, rock and roll as a, I want to say art form, which I guess it is, has grown, and you know, it reached beyond middle age. I mean, it started in the 50s, and you know, I think rock and roll as an art form, once again, you know, it's a bit like jazz now. You know, there's an avid audience for it, but it's not what I would call pop music. It's not the most popular music, although we do play pop music, but I think of Blondie as a rock and roll band. The longevity factor, you know, I mean, people thought Elvis was going to be an overnight sensation and you know, disappear. And I think Ringo Starr said his plans were to open a bunch of hair salons, right, back when. So people were always planning for the future. I just kind of seem to be going from strength to strength. You know, after the Blondie thing stopped in the 80s, I played with Eurythmics for quite a while, as you said. So. But no, one can never expect for it to go on this long. But now, you know, I'm planning on living forever, so it's there's no end in sight. Yeah, I mean, to play once again rock and roll music, you do kind of have to have that feeling of what it was like to get together with your first group of friends and play music, maybe in the front room or in the garage. And I try to keep that in my mind's eye a bit.
Right. I mean, the other interesting thing with being out now with Blondie, I mean, you must be seeing sort of second, third generations of people that are getting into the music.
Yeah, the music of Blondie has a lot of appeal to a younger audience and to children, actually. There's a lot of children that like the Blondie tunes. I think maybe some of the songs are a bit like nursery rhymes.
Right.
I think more like Paul McCartney's songs had more appeal to kids than John Lennon's songs in a way, because of the melodies and the sort of inner sort of, you know, yeah, the inner child, once again, that comes out in composing. Yeah, we get, I guess we're probably spanning 3 different generations at this point. And yeah, it's pretty phenomenal.
Right, right. Okay.
The music is the legacy of the band. The image, Debbie's image, the guy's image, and the whole sort of punk rock phenomena, the whole sort of synergy of the 70s, that kind of like got us off the ground. But now really the legacy is the music, and people want to see the band live, and of course the New Day business plan is really all about the T-shirt and the live performance more so than the recording. So we're out playing live and we're enjoying it, and yeah, you see a lot of different people at the shows. It's pretty exciting in a way. Yeah, we released a new album, I think maybe around in March.
Right.
And we're playing quite a few songs from it in the set, and the songs, of course, have evolved from the actual recordings, and I kind of prefer the way we perform them live now, as they're a bit clinical in the studio. And this most recent Blondie recording, it was really driven by computers and by the digital age.
Right.
So taking that and bringing it into a live performance, the songs, as I said, have evolved, and I'm enjoying playing them a lot. And they're going over great. They fit in great with the classic Blondie songs and some of the deeper album cuts that we do.
I mean, playing the, you know, the Blondie material from back in the day, if you like. I mean, how much liberty do you have to sort of mess with the parts, or do you try and keep as true to them as you possibly can?
Well, I like to think every performance I do is different from the one that came before. I really do enjoy spontaneity. I enjoy improvisation. Of course, you're working in a basic framework, but that could be the same thing for John Coltrane or Miles Davis as well. There was a framework. I mean, not to compare the music, but I do think in a live performance, spontaneity and improvisation is a big part of what sparks the music and moves it forward and enables the musicians to be on stage and enjoy it. We were talking about doing a song tonight called War Child, which is on an album from '82. We rehearsed it a bit. Sounds good to me. Debbie's for it, doing it tonight. Chris doesn't necessarily want to do it tonight. I said, does it really matter if we make a mistake or if we screw it up? I mean, not really.
It's the spirit.
You know what I mean? It's the spirit of it. The set, half of it's done to click tracks and sequencers, and the other half is basically kind of free form. I don't like to think I play the same drum licks night after night, but of course, you know, the intro to Call Me, for instance, or intro to Dreaming, I mean, those remain. They're kind of archetypical Blondie, Clem, Burke drum intro things. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to do that.
Sure.
But what goes on, and as long as we all start at the beginning and meet at the end, whatever happens in the middle, it's all good.
It's rock and roll.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel.
Good, good. I want to ask you, I mean, back when you first joined Blondie, I mean, who were you listening to? What drummers were you listening to that inspired you to kind of take up the drums?
Well, really, it starts with Ringo Starr for me, actually. But, you know, I mean, people from my generation, the Beatles on the TV show Ed Sullivan, which I only realized how auspicious that wasn't to my friends in the UK, because they were just celebrating the 50 years, I think, of the Beatles' performance on the Ed Sullivan show. Yeah. And when I was over here at the time, and my mates said that it didn't really matter, almost like they were just like the lads from Liverpool, the Beatles. They weren't like, for us, they were like these people that got beamed in from outer space into our TV set on a Sunday night, you know, and it was just a phenomenon, like, what is this? But, you know, here, I mean, people related to the Beatles, I could see in a different way, as you know, they were like the people, you know. I mean, and the colloquialisms that the Beatles use in the songs, the slang and all that stuff seems so brilliant and so, you know, different. But really, when you meet people from the UK, that's how they speak. So there was almost like a folk music the Beatles were playing, you know. So Ringo, but then unbeknownst to me, Hal Blaine and Earl Palmer, because, I mean, of course I know who both of those gentlemen are now very well. I was friends with Earl about the last 10 years of his life. Of course, Earl played with Fats Domino, Little Richard. You know, he played on Eddie Cochran stuff. He played on La Bamba. He played on River Deep Mountain High. And Hal Blaine, of course, was in the Wrecking Crew, Spectre, but also played on, I mean, between those two guys, they played on almost every hit record that came out of Southern California in the 60s. So they were both very influential to me, but unbeknownst to me, because I really didn't know their names because they were session musicians. And then, you know, the obvious, you know, Keith Moon, and I mean, I recall, you know, the end of my little drum lesson, the last 10 minutes, you get to bring in a record that you wanted to play along to, and you know, I'd bring in like a Beatles record or a Four Seasons record, and you know, play along. And of course, the level on the record player at the time, and it was just a little speaker, you know, and you're sitting there at the kit playing along. All of a sudden, I bring in My Generation, and I want to play that. I'm at the end going, you know, it's like all over the shop. And so Keith, when I heard that first Who album, you know, and then there's Dino Danelli from the Young Rascals at the time, who's a friend. Just spoke to him the other day. And actually Carmine Appice, or Carmine Appice, however that may be or may or not be pronounced. Vanilla Fudge, his first band that he had the hit, You Keep Me Hanging On, they were one of the first professional live rock bands I ever saw. It was the Vanilla Fudge. And Carmine, of course, was a major influence on Bonham. And, you know, with the 26-inch bass drum, the sort of big band drum setup and all that. And people like that, you know, Dino Danelli was a real big one.
Right.
That I sometimes don't mention. Because everyone goes for the Keith Moon thing right away.
Sure.
But, you know, and then Ringo, and I mean, Charlie Watts as well. I mean, the Beatles and the Stones, the Who, the Kinks, Mick Avery, all that stuff that, you know, Jim McCarty, Yardbirds.
Right.
You know.
Interesting that really, from you being American, almost like you guys kind of soaked up the English stuff, and in a way we were kind of almost soaking up the American stuff. It was almost like the grass is greener.
Yeah, well, there's that thing that like the Stones and the Beatles brought American music back to the Americans, you know, whether it be Tamla Motown or the blues or Little Richard and all that stuff, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it was phenomenal what happened with the Beatles and the Stones, making the American public aware of our rock and roll heroes that were kind of overlooked in the 60s, like Little Richard or Chuck Berry, for instance, or people like Muddy Waters, John Lee Hooker, and people like that. You know, that really, I mean, most people my age would say that's what brought the awareness of the blues and that roots rock and roll music back to the United States. So yeah, no, and also those bands were song oriented, and I always kind of want to play to the song. I was never really about sitting in a room and just, I mean, I was in drum corps, I learned my rudiments, I studied, you know, here and there. I took drum lessons when I was a kid, but I was really all about just playing along to the music and playing along with my mates, you know, in the front room, and just, you know, the bonding and the commiserating and the camaraderie that goes on with that. And just that was my whole sort of social being when I was a kid, was playing music.
Right.
I started when I was, you know, 12, 13 years old.
Did you have sort of understanding, supportive parents?
I did, very much so. My dad used to drive the van for my high school band and things like that, yeah. Yeah, they were.
I mean, were your mum and dad, were they playing music in the house as well?
My mom played piano and sang along. My dad actually was a drummer too. Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay, right. Did he? Was he? So
he had a band with his brothers and his dad, like a social, like a wedding band sort of thing,
right,
when they were kids. But he didn't. As an adult, he didn't play. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I remember I got my dad's drums out of my grandma's attic a long time, and I still recall getting them down and all that.
Do you still have them?
No, I wish I did, because they were like 40s, like Radio Kings,
oh, wow,
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, yeah. There was always music, and there was a piano in the house and all that stuff. There was always music around.
Excellent.